The bees stopped humming on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my least favorite day of the week. Not quite the soul-crushing despair of Monday, but too far from Friday to matter. I was in my backyard in southeast Portland trying to fix the latch on my shed for the third time that month when I noticed it. Silence. Not the peaceful kind you get at 3 a.m. when the city finally shuts up. This was different. Wrong. Like the pause before a car crash when time stretches out and your brain screams something's about to go very, very bad. I straightened up, wiping sweat off my forehead with the back of my hand. My backyard wasn't much. 20 by 30 feet of overgrown grass, a couple of raised beds where I grew tomatoes and herbs, and 6 beehives I'd been keeping for the past 3 years. The hives sat in the far corner. I painted bright yellow because my ex-girlfriend said they looked too industrial in their natural wood finish. She was gone now, but the yellow remained, a cheerful middle finger to the gray Portland drizzle. The hives were quiet. Too quiet. I walked over, my work boots squelching through the damp grass. April in Oregon meant rain about 18 hours a day, and the other 6 hours were just the sky taking a smoke break before starting up again. But today was clear. Bright. The kind of day that made you remember why you paid $2,000 a month for a studio apartment in this overpriced hipster paradise. I crouched down in front of the first hive, peering at the entrance. Usually there'd be dozens of bees coming and going, little kamikazes of productivity. Today, nothing. Not a single one. "Guys," I said, "I'm feeling like an idiot for talking to insects. You okay in there?" That's when it happened. The voice, if you could call it that, hit me like a bass drop at a rave. Not words exactly. More like feelings, images. It's hard to explain. Imagine someone dumping a bucket of ice water over your head, except instead of water, it's pure, concentrated dread. Cold, dark, wings too heavy. Can't fly. Can't. I jerked back, landing on my ass in the wet grass. My heart was doing a drum solo against my ribs. What the hell? I'd been hearing animals my whole life. Not like Dr. Dolittle or some Disney princess bullshit. More like I could feel what they felt. A dog's excitement when you grabbed the leash. A cat's contempt when you tried to pet it wrong. My therapist in college said it was hyperempathy, maybe tied to my Asperger's. I called it annoying as hell and learned to tune it out. But this was different, louder, more desperate. I scrambled to my feet and carefully opened the hive, smoking it first like you're supposed to. The wooden frames pulled out with a soft scrape. Dead, all of them, hundreds of bees just still. Some were curled up in the cells, others had fallen to the bottom of the hive in a fuzzy carpet of corpses. No. I checked the second hive. Same thing. Third, fourth, all 6. Dead. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and Googled "bee die-off Portland April 2027. The results loaded slowly. My internet connection was shit as usual. But when they did, my stomach dropped. The top result was from the Oregonian, posted 2 hours ago. Mass bee deaths reported across Pacific Northwest. I clicked through, and then clicked through again. And again. It wasn't just Portland, it was Seattle, Vancouver, San Francisco, Los Angeles. The entire West Coast was reporting the same thing. Beekeepers waking up to silent hives, dead colonies, total collapse. I sat down on my back steps, phone clutched in my sweaty hand, and read through the comments section like an addict chasing a fix. Bee Guy PDX. All 3 of my hives gone. 15 years keeping bees, never seen anything like this. Sustainable, Sarah. This is terrifying. Has anyone checked on wild bees, bumblebees, mason bees? Preppers unite. I've been saying this for years. Colony collapse disorder is just the beginning. Stock up on canned food now. Portland Jen. My neighbor's hives are all dead too. This can't be coincidence. Beekeeper Mike. Just checked the hive at my office. Same. Every single bee. Dead. And I should have closed the browser. Should have gone inside, cracked a beer, and pretended this was just another weird news cycle that would blow over in a week. Instead, I kept scrolling. The articles kept coming, each one worse than the last. CNN. Mysterious bee deaths spread to East Coast. BBC. Global bee population in freefall. Scientists baffled. The Guardian. Is this the beginning of the end for pollinators? I clicked on a YouTube video. Some bearded guy in a flannel shirt, because of course, was standing in front of his hives looking shell-shocked. I don't understand, he said to the camera, his voice cracking. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen colony collapse before, but nothing like this. They're just all gone. Every single one, in every hive. Overnight. The comments were a mix of panic and denial. At Survivalist Dad, this is it, people. The collapse. Hope you're ready. At Honeylover88, this has to be fake. Mass hysteria. Bees don't just die everywhere at once. At Climate Warrior, what did you think would happen? We've been poisoning them for decades. At Just Some Guy, so what? No more almonds? That's what you're worried about? This is way bigger than fucking almonds. I put my phone down and looked at my hands. They were still shaking. By the time I looked up, the sun was setting, painting the sky the color of a healing bruise. Purple and yellow and sick. The news got worse. Over the next 3 days, the die-off spread like a virus. East Coast, Midwest, Europe, Asia, South America, Africa, every continent except Antarctica, and that was only because there were no bees there to begin with. Scientists scrambled to figure out what was happening. Pesticides, climate change, some new disease, a combination of all three. The theories piled up faster than the bodies. I watched it all from my couch, laptop balanced on my knees, refreshing Reddit every 30 seconds like it would somehow make the news less apocalyptic. On Thursday, the CDC issued a statement. Very official, very calm, very please don't panic, even though we're definitely panicking. While the sudden decline in bee populations is concerning, we want to assure the public that our food supply remains stable. Alternative pollination methods are being explored, and we are working closely with agricultural experts to minimize disruption. We urge citizens to remain calm and avoid panic buying. Alternative pollination methods. Right. Because we were going to hand-pollinate every apple tree in Washington with Q-tips like some deranged arts and crafts project. Too late on the panic buying, too. I'd already seen the videos from California. Grocery stores with empty shelves, people fighting over the last bags of rice, security guards getting punched in the face over canned beans. I closed the laptop and stared at my ceiling. My studio apartment was small, 400 square feet of cozy urban living according to the rental ad, but it felt smaller now. The walls seemed to press in like the whole world was shrinking. My phone buzzed. Text from my mom in Wisconsin. Have you seen the news about the bees? Are yours okay? I typed back. They're dead, Mom. All of them. In 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. I'm sure it'll be fine, honey. These things always blow over. Remember the murder hornets? Everyone panicked about those and nothing happened. I wanted to type, Mom, this is different. This is actually the end of the fucking world. But I didn't. Instead, I wrote, yeah, probably. She sent back a heart emoji. I put my phone down and walked to the window. Outside, Portland looked normal. Cars driving by, people walking their dogs. A cyclist running a red light because this was Portland and traffic laws were more like suggestions. Everything looked fine. But I could feel it. That same wrong silence from the backyard. Like the whole world was holding its breath. That night I had the dream for the first time. I was standing in a field of flowers, sunflowers, I think, and tall enough that I couldn't see over them. The sky was black, but not nighttime black. More like absence. like someone had erased the sky with a dirty eraser, leaving only void. And then I heard them. The bees. Thousands of them, millions maybe, all screaming the same message into my brain. Run, hide, store food. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I tried to ask what was coming, but my voice wouldn't work. The flowers around me started to wilt, turning brown and collapsing in on themselves. The bees fell from the air like rain, hitting the ground with soft thuds. And then I was alone in a field of dead plants under a dead sky. I woke up drenched in sweat, my sheets tangled around my legs like they were trying to strangle me. It was 3:47 a.m. The red numbers on my alarm clock seemed to pulse in the darkness, and I grabbed my phone and opened my banking app, squinting at the screen. Balance, $3,247.18. It wasn't much. I worked as a freelance web developer, which was a fancy way of saying I was broke 11 months out of the year and slightly less broke in December when everyone needed their websites updated before the holidays. But it was enough. I got dressed, jeans, hoodie, my ratty Converses that had more holes than shoe, and drove to the 24-hour Walmart on 82nd Avenue. The store was nearly empty at 4 in the morning. Just me, a couple of night shift workers restocking shelves with the enthusiasm of people who'd given up on life, and a guy in a bathrobe buying cat food and what looked like an alarming amount of red wine. I grabbed a cart and started filling it. Rice, 20 pounds of it. Beans, black, pinto, kidney, eating whatever they had. Canned soup, canned vegetables, canned fruit. Peanut butter, the cheap stuff that was more oil than peanuts but would last forever. Pasta, more rice, more beans, bottled water. Those shitty cup noodles that taste like regret and poverty but would probably outlast the apocalypse. The cashier, a kid who couldn't have been older than 20 with a name tag that said Dylan and the dead eyes of someone who'd seen too many 4 a.m. shopping sprees, didn't even blink as he scanned item after item. "Prepping for something?" he asked, his voice flat as a pancake. "Camping trip," I lied. "Uh-huh." He scanned another 24-pack of ramen. "Must be a long trip." "I like to be prepared." "Sure, man." Beep, beep, beep. "That'll be $847.32. I winced but swiped my card. The machine beeped. Approved. My bank account now had less than $2,400 in it. Rent was due in 2 weeks. I had exactly $700 set aside for that, which meant I had maybe $1,700 for everything else for the month. I was officially broke, but I had food. Dylan helped me load the bags into my cart without comment. As I was leaving, he called out, "Hey!" I turned. "You're not crazy," he said. "My roommate's been doing the same thing. Says his dad was in the military and taught him to always have supplies ready." "Smart dad." "Yeah. Hope you're wrong, though. About needing it." "Me too." I loaded everything into my car, a 2015 Honda Civic that was more rust than car at this point, with a check engine light that had been on for so long I'd forgotten what the engine was supposed to sound like without it, and drove home as the sun started to creep over Mount Hood, and the mountain looked beautiful in the dawn light, majestic, eternal. I wondered how long it would be before I saw it again. My hands were shaking the whole way home. By the end of April, the price of strawberries had tripled. I knew because I made the mistake of going to the grocery store. The produce section looked like a crime scene. Half the shelves were empty. The other half had prices that made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. Strawberries, $15 per pound. Apples, $8 per pound. Almonds, $25 for a tiny bag that used to cost maybe $6. A woman in front of me was arguing with a manager. "This is price gouging," she shouted, waving a bag of apples. "This is illegal." The manager, a middle-aged guy with thinning hair and the look of someone who'd had this conversation 50 times today, shook his head. "Ma'am, And we don't control the prices. The suppliers do. There's a shortage, supply and demand. Shortage? It's been 3 weeks. How is there already a shortage? Because bees pollinate. I know what bees do. I'm not an idiot. But this is America. We have agriculture. We have technology. We can't just run out of food. The manager looked like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it. I'm sorry, ma'am. That's the price. The woman stood there for a long moment, her face red, her hands shaking. Then she put the apples back and walked away. I didn't buy anything, just turned around and left. Outside, I saw a guy selling apples from the back of his truck. Handwritten sign, fresh apples, $3 each. $3 for one apple. A small crowd had gathered, people were buying them. By mid-May, the almonds were harder to find than toilet paper during the pandemic. By the end of May, California declared a state of emergency. By June, the riots started. It began in California, which made sense. California grew like 70% of the nation's fruits and nuts, and most of that required bees. No bees, no pollination, no crops, no food. Simple math, really. The kind of simple that felt like a punch to the gut every time you thought about it. I watched the footage on my laptop. Grocery stores in Sacramento with empty shelves, people shouting at managers like yelling would make apples materialize out of thin air. Someone threw a shopping cart through a window. Someone else pepper sprayed a security guard. Then Fresno. Then Bakersfield. Then LA. Someone threw a brick through a Whole Foods window in Venice Beach, which felt darkly appropriate. The rich kids who'd been Instagramming their acai bowls and avocado toast for years were suddenly faced with the reality that food didn't just spawn in the organic section. The comments on the videos were a mix of schadenfreude and terror. At Real Talk 2027. This is what happens when you build a society on Instagram and lattes. Reality hits hard. At Mom Off 3, I have children to feed. How am I supposed to explain to them why there's no food? At Libertarian Larry, government failed us. Again, should have never trusted them to regulate agriculture. At Just Watching, we deserve this. We killed the bees. Now the bees are killing us. Portland stayed calm longer than I expected. We were good at pretending everything was fine. Just throw on your flannel and grab your craft beer and ignore the fact that civilization was circling the drain. But by July, even Portland cracked. I was walking to the corner store, one of those sad little places that sells cigarettes, overpriced milk, and lottery tickets to people who should know better, when I saw it. A crowd outside the Safeway on Hawthorne, maybe 50 people deep, all shouting. I stopped, instinct telling me to turn around. But curiosity is a hell of a drug, and I've always been an addict. A woman in yoga pants was arguing with a security guard. She had one of those expensive yoga mats slung over her shoulder and a reusable grocery bag that said "Save the Earth" in cheerful green letters. The irony was not lost on me. I've been coming to this store for 10 years, she shouted. You can't just, "Ma'am, we're rationing." 2 items per customer, those are the rules. 2 items? I have a family, I have 3 kids at home. So does everyone else. She looked like she was about to cry or throw a punch, I couldn't tell which. Her face was red, her hands balled into fists. This is America. This is supposed to be America. The security guard, a young black guy who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past month, just stared at her. It is America, ma'am, and in America we follow the rules. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Let her through, she's got kids." Someone else yelled back, "So do I, follow the damn rules." A third voice, "Fuck the rules, I'm taking what I need." The crowd surged forward. I backed away slowly, the way you do when you see a bar fight brewing and know enough to get out before the bottles start flying. And the security guard pulled out his radio. I heard him say something about backup. I kept walking. That night I heard gunshots for the first time. Pop, 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 echoing off the buildings like firecrackers. Except it wasn't the 4th of July and nobody was celebrating. I sat in my apartment, lights off, curtains drawn, listening to sirens wail through the streets until dawn. I counted 12 different sirens. Police, ambulance, fire trucks, maybe more. After a while, they all blended together into one long scream. I didn't sleep. August brought the heat. Portland isn't supposed to be hot. We're supposed to be the rainy city, the gray city, the city where people wear hoodies in July and complain about the sun when it actually shows up. Our idea of a heat wave is like 3 days of 80-degree weather, but that August hit different. Day after day of 90-degree weather, sometimes pushing into the hundreds. The sun beating down like it had a personal grudge against the Pacific Northwest. The city wasn't built for this. No AC in most buildings. Everyone walking around looking like they'd been microwaved. And without bees, without crops, without food, the heat felt like mockery. The farmer's market on Division Street, usually packed with hipsters buying $8 organic carrots and having intense conversations about the terroir of kale, was a ghost town. Half the stalls were empty. The other half had signs, cash only, no refunds, no haggling. I walked through anyway, more out of habit than hope, and there was a vendor selling eggs, $15 a dozen, and another selling potatoes that looked like they'd been dug up from someone's backyard with a spoon. Probably had been. An old guy with a beard like a Civil War general was selling jars of honey. "Last batch," he said when he caught me looking. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying. "Bees are gone. Kept hives for 30 years. All dead now." "I'm sorry," I said, "because what else do you say?" He shrugged. "Ain't your fault. Ain't anybody's fault, really. We all did this. Every one of us." "How much?" I asked, pointing at the honey. $50 a jar." I laughed. I couldn't help it. $50 for honey that used to cost 8. He didn't laugh back. His eyes were red-rimmed and tired. "Suit yourself. Won't find it cheaper anywhere else. And in a month, you won't find it at all." He was right. I knew he was right. I bought 2 jars even though it hurt, even though it meant I was spending $100 on honey while my bank account dwindled toward zero. "You prepping?" the old guy asked as I counted out the cash. "Yeah. Smart. Most people aren't. Most people think this is all gonna blow over, that the government's gonna fix it, that somebody's gonna fix it." He laughed, a bitter sound. "Ain't nobody fixing this." "I know." He handed me the jars. They were warm from sitting in the sun. "Good luck, son." "You too." Walking back to my car, I passed a bulletin board covered in flyers. The usual neighborhood stuff. Missing pets. More than usual, I noticed. People were probably eating them. Roommate wanted, good luck with that. Guitar lessons, seriously. And then, near the bottom, a new one that made my stomach twist. Community meeting. Food share program. Don't face this alone. Pool resources, survive together. All welcome. Bring what you can. Tabor Heights Community Center, Saturday, 6 p.m. I took a photo of it with my phone even though I knew I wouldn't go. I'd never been good at groups. Too many voices, too many emotions bleeding into my head like static interference. My therapist had tried to help me with it. Exposure therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, all the acronyms, but nothing really worked. It was easier alone. But standing there in the August heat, watching people shuffle past with hollow eyes and too light shopping bags, watching a mother try to explain to her crying kid why they couldn't buy fruit, and I wondered if easier was the same as survivable. I got in my car and drove home. I didn't go to the community meeting. The first case of cannibalism was reported in Idaho. September 3rd, 2027. I remember the date because it was my birthday. 31 years old, sitting in my apartment eating canned peaches straight from the can with a spoon I hadn't bothered to wash, and the BBC article popped up on my phone. Authorities investigate reports of cannibalism in rural Idaho community. I dropped the spoon. The article was careful, clinical. It talked about extreme food scarcity and isolated incidents and ongoing investigation. It used phrases like alleged consumption of human remains and suspects in custody and no public danger at this time. It didn't use the word everyone was thinking, desperation. But the Reddit thread. Oh, the Reddit thread didn't pull punches, r/collapse. This is it. This is how it starts. First Idaho, then Montana, then Wyoming, then everywhere. First it's rural areas, then suburbs, then cities. Your neighborhood is next. Your family is next. You are next. r/preppers. I told you all this would happen. 3 months ago I told you anyone who didn't stock up is going to be prey. That's just how it is. Survival of the fittest. r/a boring dystopia. Capitalism has literally driven us to eat each other. Late stage doesn't even cover it. We're in endgame now. The system has consumed itself. r/Idaho. This is fake news. Nothing like this happened here. MSM trying to cause panic. r/Idaho. Reply, bro, I live 20 miles from where it happened. It's real. Police have the whole area locked down. I closed Reddit and opened my pantry. Rows of canned goods stared back at me. I'd been eating 1 meal a day to make it last longer. So far, I'd lost 15 pounds. My jeans hung loose around my waist. My face looked gaunt in the mirror. How long could I last? 6 months? A year? And then what? That's the question that kept me up at night, not what if I run out of food, but what happens when everyone runs out of food? When the cans are empty and the stores are bare and the farms are dead and the only source of protein left is each other. I looked at my hands, thought about what they might have to do to survive. The answer came faster than I expected. October brought the ferals. That's what people started calling them online. Not a scientific term, not an official designation, just ferals. The virus, if you could call it that, didn't show up on any standard tests. It wasn't bacterial, wasn't fungal, wasn't viral in the traditional sense. The CDC released a statement full of words like prion-based pathology and transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, and similar to Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which was science speak for, we have no idea what the hell this is or how to stop it. What we did know, it came from eating human flesh. What we also knew, it made people insane. The mechanism, as best as scientists could figure, was this. When you eat human brain tissue or spinal cord, you ingest prions, misfolded proteins that cause other proteins to misfold. It's like a zombie virus, except instead of biting, you get it from dining. The first symptoms appeared within days: fever, confusion, loss of coordination. And then came the personality changes, the aggression, the loss of empathy. Then came the full transformation: hunting behavior, pack mentality, loss of language, loss of humanity. They kept some intelligence, enough to open doors, use tools, set traps, but lost everything that made them people. The first case in Portland was a guy in Old Town. He'd been found eating a homeless man in an alley behind a shuttered Starbucks. When the cops tried to arrest him, he attacked them like a rabid dog. Bit one officer's hand clean through. Took 4 of them to hold him down. By the time they got him to the hospital, he was seizing, foaming at the mouth. Eyes rolled back in his head, showing only whites. He died 6 hours later, but not before biting 2 nurses and a doctor. All 3 of them were dead within a week, and the news tried to keep it quiet at first. Isolated incidents, containment measures in place, no cause for alarm. The usual PR bullshit meant to prevent panic. But you can't hide a plague, not when people are dying in the streets, not when the screams echo through the night. By mid-October, the hospitals were overrun. By the end of the month, they'd stopped accepting new patients. Signs on the doors. Quarantine in effect. do not enter. If you got infected, you were on your own. The ferals didn't die fast, though. That was the worst part. They'd linger for days, sometimes weeks, their minds rotting faster than their bodies. They'd wander the streets, attacking anyone they saw, spreading the infection like a wildfire in a drought. And they were hungry, always hungry. I stopped going outside unless I absolutely had to. In November was when I heard the rats. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to remember what fresh bread tasted like, the way it felt to walk into a bakery and smell yeast and warmth and normal life, when the voice hit me. Danger. Sick ones. Many sick ones. Stay hidden. Stay quiet. I sat up so fast I got dizzy. The voice wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from inside the walls. I grabbed my flashlight. Batteries were running low, but I'd been hoarding them and crept into the kitchen. There in the corner by the sink were 2 rats. Big ones the size of small cats, their eyes gleaming like wet marbles in the beam of light. Hide food. Hide self. Sick ones coming. Jesus Christ, I whispered. The rats tilted their heads, staring at me with an intelligence that made my skin crawl. Not the vague animal awareness I was used to, but something sharper, more focused. I'd heard animals before, sure, but never like this. Never so clear, so articulate. It was like they'd leveled up, like the collapse of humanity had somehow made them smarter. Or maybe I was just losing my mind. Both were equally possible. Many dead, many sick, few safe, you safe, for now. What's coming? I asked, feeling insane for talking to rats. But then again, talking to myself would have been crazier. What's going to happen? The rats exchanged a look. I swear to God, they looked at each other like they were deciding how much to tell me. Humans eat humans. Sickness spreads. Then, end. End of what? End of everything. End of you. One of the rats scurried closer. I resisted the urge to step back. We survive. We always survive. Humans? And maybe not. Thanks for the vote of confidence. We tell truth. Truth is, store more food. Trust no one. Leave city soon. Leave, and go where? But the rats were already gone, disappearing into a crack in the baseboard that I hadn't even known was there. I stood in the dark kitchen, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The end. They'd said, the end. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I believed it. Part 2. The descent December came in cold and stayed cold. Portland doesn't usually get snow. We get rain, we get sleet. We get that annoying half-frozen shit that's not quite either but makes everything miserable. But actual snow? That's rare. That year wasn't rare, that year was biblical. The temperature dropped below freezing on December 1st and didn't come back up. Not for weeks. Snow fell in heavy. It wet chunks covering the city in white. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't terrifying. The power grid went down on the 8th. I remember because I was in the middle of reheating canned chili on my camping stove, the little one I'd bought 3 years ago for a backpacking trip I never took. When the lights flickered once, twice, and died. No dramatic surge, no explosion, no transformer sparking. Just nothing. 1 second I had lights. The next I didn't. I walked to the window and looked out. The entire block was dark. Then the next block. Then the whole damn neighborhood as far as I could see. The city had gone black. My phone buzzed. 1 bar of service left, battery at 23%, with an emergency alert, rolling blackouts in effect. Conserve energy. Further updates to follow. There were no further updates. I waited. He'd checked my phone every hour. Nothing. By the 10th, the water stopped running. I found out when I went to fill a pot to boil water. Turned the tap. Nothing happened. Not even a drip. I tried the bathroom sink. Same. The toilet wouldn't refill after I flushed it. That was it. No more water. I'd prepared for this. Had a dozen cases of bottled water stacked in my closet. But seeing it actually happen was different. Knowing it intellectually versus experiencing it viscerally are two very different things. I set up buckets on my balcony to catch snow, melted it on the camping stove. It took forever and the water tasted like metal and sadness, but it was something. By the 15th, the grocery stores had been picked clean. I know because I made one last trip. Bundled up in every layer I owned, I trudged through the snow to the Safeway. And the doors were smashed open, glass everywhere, crunching under my boots. Inside was worse. Every shelf empty, not just the food, everything. Cleaning supplies, toilet paper, light bulbs, batteries, all gone. The floor was covered in trash, spilled food, broken jars. Someone had spray-painted "fuck the system" across the dairy case. A few people were picking through the wreckage, looking for anything missed. We avoided eye contact. Nobody talked. I found a crushed box of crackers under a shelf. Half of them were broken, but they were edible. I took them. By the 20th, the police stopped responding to calls. I know because I heard gunshots, close, maybe 2 blocks away, and called 911. The line was busy. I tried again, still busy. Third try, it didn't even ring. Just a recorded message. All circuits are busy. I please try your call again later. I didn't try again. Portland became a ghost town. Not literally, there were still people, thousands of them. But the city I knew was gone. No coffee shops, no food carts, no Saturday market, no Powell's books, no indie music venues, no artisan donut shops, no arguments about bike lanes, no carefully cultivated weirdness. Just empty streets and boarded-up windows and the occasional sound of gunfire echoing off the West Hills. I stayed inside as much as possible, burning through my stockpile slower than I wanted but faster than I'd hoped. 1 can of soup a day, a handful of rice, water rationed down to 2 bottles daily, supplemented with melted snow when I could manage it. My body adjusted, sort of. The hunger became background noise after a while, like tinnitus. The animals kept talking to me. Crows warned me about groups of ferals roaming Division Street, sick ones hunting, stay inside, they smell blood, and I believed them. A stray dog told me about a dead body in the park. Sick smell, bad meat, stay away, don't eat. And I didn't go near it. Mice in the walls whispered about the houses nearby, which ones were empty, quiet, no heartbeat, safe to search. Which ones still had people, breathing inside, scared, smell, might have food. It should have freaked me out. A year ago, hell, even 6 months ago it would have, but now it felt like the only thing keeping me alive. The animals had adapted, humans were dying, but the rats and crows and coyotes, they were thriving. Christmas Day, I ate the last of my peanut butter. I scraped the jar clean with my finger, savoring every molecule of salt and sugar and fat. It tasted like childhood, like Saturday mornings watching cartoons, like my mom making PB&J sandwiches and cutting off the crusts because I insisted the crusts were poisonous. It tasted like a world where the biggest problem was convincing yourself to go to the gym instead of eating pizza. It tasted like normal. I allowed myself exactly 30 seconds to feel sorry for myself, to mourn everything we'd lost. Then I opened my notebook, a spiral-bound thing I'd been using to track supplies, writing in tiny letters to save space, and did the math. Rice, 12 pounds remaining, beans, 8 cans, soup, 15 cans, vegetables, 22 cans, fruit, 6 cans, miscellaneous, crackers, etc. 4 items. Water, 31 bottles. If I kept rationing at current levels, 1 meal per day, minimal water, I had maybe 3 months. 4 if I pushed it. If I went down to half a meal per day, in maybe 6 months. And then, what? I'd been avoiding the question, but it was time to face it. I needed more supplies, which meant I needed to leave the apartment, which meant I needed to risk encountering the ferals. I spent the rest of Christmas staring at the wall, trying to convince myself it would be okay. It didn't work. I left on December 28th, just after dawn. The plan was simple. Hit the houses in my neighborhood, look for anything useful, food, water, batteries, medicine, anything. Get back before dark. In and out. Easy. Except nothing was easy anymore. I dressed in layers. Thermal underwear that I'd bought on sale 5 years ago and never worn. Jeans, 2 hoodies. My dad's old hunting jacket that I'd inherited when he died. That smelled like mothballs and regret and something indefinably dad. And I stuffed a backpack with empty containers for water, my flashlight, my multi-tool, and a crowbar I'd bought at Home Depot back when the scariest thing in my life was a stuck window. The crowbar felt heavy in my hand. I'd never used it as a weapon before. Never thought I'd have to. Before I left, I crouched down and listened. The rats were back, peeking out from behind the fridge. "We're going." "Looking for food," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange in the silent apartment. "Is it safe?" One rat tilted its head, considering. "Safe? No, nothing's safe. But fewer sick ones today. Cold makes them slow. Hunger makes them desperate but slow. So I should be careful. Yes, very careful. They hunt in groups now. Pack behavior. Like wolves. Jesus. Thanks for the pep talk. Truth keeps you alive. Lies kill you. Fair enough. I unlocked my door, 3 deadbolts now, paranoia being the better part of survival, and stepped out into the frozen wasteland that used to be my neighborhood. The hallway was dark. Emergency lighting had stopped working weeks ago. I used my flashlight, sweeping it back and forth, checking for movement. Nothing. Down the stairs carefully because they were slippery with ice that had somehow gotten inside, and out into the street. The street was eerily quiet. Snow had covered everything in a blanket of white that would have been beautiful if it wasn't hiding the decay underneath. Abandoned cars sat like metal corpses, their windows smashed, tires stolen or flat. Some had bodies in them, frozen. I tried not to look. I stuck to the sidewalk, boots crunching through the snow, eyes scanning for movement. And the first house I checked belonged to the Hendersons, or used to. Bill and Margaret Henderson, mid-50s, no kids. They'd left in October, piled into their Subaru with whatever they could carry, heading east to her parents' place in Montana. I'd watched them go from my window, wondering if they'd made it. Probably not, I thought now. Montana was probably just as bad. Their front door was unlocked. That should have been my first warning, but I was focused on the promise of supplies. Inside, the house was trashed. Drawers pulled out, closets emptied, walls tagged with spray paint. Already looted, nice try fuckers, nothing left. Still, I checked the pantry. Sometimes people missed things. Sometimes there were hidden spots. And sure enough, in the back of the top shelf, hidden behind some ancient Tupperware that smelled like death. 3 cans of green beans. Score. I stuffed them in my backpack and moved to the next house. Same story. Looted, trashed, empty. The third house had a body in the living room. I smelled it before I saw it. That sweet, rotten smell that makes your stomach flip and your lunch threaten to make a reappearance. I should have left right then. Should have backed out and found another house. But I saw the kitchen through the doorway. Saw the pantry door hanging open. Just a quick look, I told myself. In and out. Don't even have to get close to the body. I stepped over the corpse. Couldn't tell if it was a man or woman, too decomposed, face bloated and purple, and made it to the kitchen. My hands were shaking. The smell was awful, clinging to the inside of my nose, and the pantry was mostly empty, but there was a bag of flour, a few cans of condensed milk, and, holy shit, a jar of instant coffee. Folgers, the cheap stuff. But it was coffee. I was reaching for it when I heard the moan, low and wet like someone gargling. I froze. The moan came again from upstairs. "Get out," my brain screamed. "Get out now, don't be stupid. Don't be the guy who dies because he wanted coffee." but my feet wouldn't move. I stood there like an idiot, clutching a jar of Folgers, listening to footsteps thump across the ceiling above me. Heavy footsteps, uneven, dragging. Then the footsteps stopped. Then they started coming down the stairs. I ran, burst out of the kitchen, and tripped over the body in the living room. My hand went into something soft and my brain screamed, "Don't think about it, don't think about it." Scrambled to my feet and threw myself out the front door. Behind me, I heard a shriek, high-pitched and inhuman, like a rabbit being murdered, and the sound of something hitting the floor hard. I didn't look back. I ran 3 blocks before my lungs gave out and I collapsed behind a dumpster, gasping for air that burned like fire in my throat. My heart was doing double time against my ribs. I thought I might pass out. A crow landed on the edge of the dumpster, cocking its head at me. "Stupid, stupid human, we told you, sick ones in houses, why you no listen?" "Yeah," I wheezed, tasting copper. "Thanks for the reminder. You live. This time. Maybe not next time. Maybe next time you food." Encouraging. The crow made a sound that might have been laughter. "We eat you when you die. All humans become food. Circle of life. You're a real ray of sunshine, you know that?" The crow flew off, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the jar of coffee I'd somehow managed to hold on to. Small victories. I made it back to my apartment just as the sun was setting, painting the sky the color of a fresh bruise, purple and yellow and sick. Total haul: 3 cans of green beans, 1 bag of flour, 2 cans of condensed milk, 1 jar of instant coffee, and a reminder that I was an idiot who nearly died for Folgers. Also the psychological trauma of touching a decomposing corpse. That was free. I locked all 3 deadbolts, pushed my couch in front of the door for good measure, and collapsed on my bed. And my hands were still shaking. I could still smell the body on them even though I'd scrubbed them raw with snow outside. I lay there in the dark, listening to my own breathing, trying not to think about what I'd touched. Eventually, exhaustion won out over disgust. That night, the nightmares came back. The field of flowers, the black sky, and the voices, louder than ever, no longer just bees, but something else, something vast and terrible. It's here. It's starting. The end is here. And you're next. You're all next. January brought the worst cold Portland had seen in 50 years. Maybe the worst cold ever. I didn't have internet to check. The thermometer I had on my balcony read -5 degrees Fahrenheit one morning. -5 in Portland. The pipes in my building froze completely, which meant no water even if it had been running. I'd been collecting snow in buckets on my balcony, melting it on the camping stove to drink. Each bucket took about 45 minutes to melt and produced maybe half a gallon of water. It tasted like metal and sadness and the faint chemical tang of pollution. I drank it anyway. What choice did I have? The animals were getting more insistent. Every time I opened a window to dump a bucket or grab snow, I'd hear them. The crows, the rats, the feral cats that prowled the alleyways looking for food. Leave. Leave now. Death coming. Big death. Many humans die. Where the hell am I supposed to go? I'd yell back, my breath misting in the frozen air. It's winter. I'll freeze. Better freeze than sick ones eat you. That's not the encouraging argument you think it is. We tell truth. You stay, you die. Simple. They didn't understand. Or maybe they did and they just didn't care. Animals lived in the moment. Humans had the curse of planning for a future that might not exist. I stayed put, because where would I go? Into the mountains? I'd freeze in a day. South, north, west, every direction was just more cold, more starvation, more ferals. At least here I had walls, food, some semblance of security. February was worse. The ferals were getting organized. I know how that sounds. Organized. Like they were forming committees and holding meetings with Robert's Rules of Order. But it was true. I'd seen it from my window. Groups of them moving together, hunting in packs like wolves. They weren't just mindless anymore. They were learning, adapting, evolution in real time. One night I watched a pack of 6 surround a house 2 blocks over. They didn't rush in screaming, and they didn't break down the door in a frenzy. They waited, watched. One of them, a woman in what used to be a business suit, picked up a rock and threw it at the window. An intentional act, calculated. The window shattered. Someone inside, I saw the flashlight beam, came to check. The ferals grabbed him. He screamed for maybe 10 seconds. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then silence. I closed the blinds and sat in the dark, listening to my own heartbeat, wondering how long before they came for me. The rats whispered from the walls. You need to leave. Soon. Very soon. I know. Then why you stay? Good question. Because I'm scared. Fear keeps you alive, but too much fear kills you. That's very philosophical for a rat. We live long time by being smart. You should try. Thanks. Yeah, I'll add it to my to-do list. But the rat was right. I knew it was right. I couldn't stay here forever. The food would run out. The ferals would eventually find me. Winter would end, but that wouldn't make things better, just different. I needed a plan. I needed somewhere to go. I spent the next week thinking, obsessing really. I barely slept, barely ate. Where could I go? The answer, when it came, seemed obvious in retrospect. March 1st, I decided to leave Portland. The decision wasn't dramatic. There was no breaking point, no final straw, no moment of epiphany. I just woke up one morning and realized that staying was suicide. Slow suicide maybe, but suicide nonetheless. I had about a month's worth of food left, maybe less if I counted honestly. The ferals were getting bolder every day. The cold was relentless, and in every day I stayed, the odds of survival dropped. So, time to go. But where? I pulled up my old paper map. Thank God for my paranoid phase 2 years ago when I'd bought emergency supplies just in case and spread it across my coffee table. The edges were worn, some of the folds starting to tear. I'd been looking at it a lot lately. The coast? No. Too exposed. The fishing towns were probably overrun or abandoned. No shelter. East into the mountains? Cascade Range? Maybe. But I didn't know how to hunt. Didn't know how to survive in the wilderness. I was a web developer who occasionally went hiking and called it outdoorsy. I'd freeze or starve in a week. South? California was a war zone from what I'd heard on the ham radios. Rival groups fighting over water, the National Guard shooting civilians, and the whole Mad Max situation playing out in real time. North? I traced the highway with my finger. Portland to Seattle was about 3 hours by car in the old world. In this one, who knew? Days, probably. Weeks if I was walking. But I'd heard rumors, whispers really, passed along by people on ham radios and message boards that still somehow worked on the dying internet. A community in the San Juan Islands, a place that was holding together, growing food somehow, keeping the ferals out. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. But what other option did I have? I could stay here and die slowly, or I could go north and maybe die quickly. At least the second option had a chance. I started packing. I left on March 5th, 2 hours before dawn. Into everything I owned that mattered fit into a hiking backpack and a duffel bag. Clothes, thermal underwear, extra socks. Feet are important, keep your feet dry. 2 changes of pants, 4 shirts, my dad's hunting jacket. Food, all my remaining supplies, about 3 weeks' worth if I rationed carefully. Water, 6 bottles plus purification tablets. I'd need to find water sources along the way. Tools, flashlight, batteries, multi-tool, the crowbar, duct tape, because duct tape fixes everything. Lighter, matches, first aid kit. And, after a long internal debate where I paced around my apartment for an hour talking to myself, My grandfather's old .38 revolver. I'd found it in a box of his things after he died. Never fired it. Didn't even know if the damn thing worked. But I'd kept it along with a box of ammunition because, I don't know, sentiment? Preparation? Now I was glad I had it. The weight of it in my jacket pocket felt like insurance, even if it was the kind that might blow up in your face. I took one last look at my apartment. 400 square feet of my life, the couch where I'd spent countless hours watching Netflix. The desk where I'd worked from home back when working from home was a choice and not a necessity and not a joke. The bed where I'd slept alone for 3 years. The walls were covered in spots where I'd hung pictures that I'd taken down and packed. Now they were just ghost rectangles, lighter patches on dingy white paint. Thanks for nothing, I said to the walls and left. The hallway was dark. I used my flashlight to navigate down the stairs. Outside, the streets were empty, and Portland had always been an early-to-bed city, despite what the party scene wanted you to believe. But this was different. This was the emptiness of a mass grave. I walked north on Division, staying in the shadows, moving fast but not running. Running attracted attention. Running said pray. A dog, some kind of shepherd mix, ribs showing through its fur, fell into step beside me. Where going? North, Seattle, maybe beyond. Long way. Dangerous. Many sick ones between here and there. You got a better idea? Stay. Hide. Wait. Wait for what? The dog looked at me with brown eyes that seemed almost human in their intelligence. For end. For everything to stop. For quiet. That's just another word for dying. Yes. We walked in silence for a block. Then the dog said, "You different. You hear us. Most humans know here." Yeah, well, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Maybe that why you live. You listen. You learn. Other humans not listen. They die. Thanks, I think. Good luck, human. May you find what you seek. The dog peeled off down an alley, leaving me alone again. I made it to the Burnside Bridge just as the sun started to rise. The bridge was a mess. Abandoned cars everywhere, some crashed into each other, some just stopped in the middle of lanes like the drivers had given up mid-commute and walked away. There was graffiti everywhere. The end is here. God has abandoned us. Repent. Fuck God. One that made me laugh darkly. Portland weird until the end. Halfway across the bridge, I stopped and looked back. Portland stretched out behind me, silent and broken, and somewhere in that concrete jungle was my old life. The coffee shop on Belmont where I'd spent too much money on lattes and felt sophisticated doing it. The bar on Hawthorne where I'd had my first panic attack and learned I couldn't handle crowds. The house in Selwood where I'd grown up, where my parents had divorced when I was 12 and everything went to shit. All of it was gone now, buried under snow and silence. I turned north and kept walking. Part 3. The road north. The highway was a graveyard. I-5 North, the main artery connecting Portland to Seattle, looked like someone had shaken a snow globe full of cars and then just left it. Vehicles were scattered everywhere, some crashed into each other in multi-car pileups. Some abandoned in the middle of lanes with doors hanging open, and some burned down to skeletal frames of blackened metal. I stuck to the shoulder, backpack digging into my shoulders, eyes constantly scanning for movement. The first body I saw was near the Janssen Beach exit. A woman slumped against a minivan. She'd been dead a while, frozen solid, her skin gray and waxy like a mannequin. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. There was a bullet hole in her temple. A gun lay in her lap. I didn't stop to check if she'd done it herself or if someone else had. Didn't matter. I kept walking. By noon, I'd counted 14 more bodies. After that, I stopped counting. What was the point? The animals were everywhere, though. Crows circled overhead like vultures, their black wings stark against the gray sky. Coyotes watched from the tree line, their eyes glowing in the weak winter sun. And they talked. In meat everywhere, good eating, human meat bad, makes sick. But so much of it. This one's still alive. Wait for this one to die too. I tried to ignore them, tried to keep walking, but their voices wormed into my head like static on a bad radio, impossible to tune out. Around 3 p.m. I heard the engine. At first I thought I was imagining it. Auditory hallucination brought on by stress and hunger and the beginning stages of hypothermia. But no, there it was, getting louder. A car, an actual functioning car with gas and someone driving it. I dove behind an overturned semi, heart pounding, and watched as a pickup truck rolled past. Slow, deliberate. 3 guys in the bed, all armed. Rifles, shotguns. One of them had what looked like a machete strapped to his back. They weren't stopping to help stranded travelers. They were hunting, looking for people. The truck crawled past my hiding spot. I held my breath, pressing myself against the cold metal of the semi's undercarriage. One of the guys scanned the highway with binoculars. "Anything?" someone called from the cab. "Nah, just bodies, dead ones." "Keep looking. Fresh meat's gotta be somewhere." Fresh meat. Jesus Christ. I stayed hidden until the sound of the engine faded completely into the distance. Then I waited another 10 minutes to be safe. Then 10 more because paranoia kept whispering, what if they're circling back? When I finally crawled out, a raven was perched on top of the semi, staring at me with one beady black eye. Bad men. Hunters. They take people. Take them where? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. To feed, to trade, to eat. My stomach turned, and the canned soup I'd eaten for breakfast threatened to make a reappearance. "You mean they're—" "Yes, they eat people, not sick ones, not yet sick, just hungry. Hungry humans eat other humans. Simple." The raven flew off, leaving me alone with that lovely mental image. I started walking faster. I made it to Longview, Washington by the second day, 25 miles in one day. My feet were screaming. I had blisters on my heels the size of quarters. Everything hurt. The town was dead, literally and figuratively. Every building was either burned out or boarded up. The streets were empty except for the occasional feral dog and piles of frozen garbage that might or might not have contained human remains. I didn't look too closely. I found a motel on the edge of town. The sign out front said Sunset Lodge, but someone had spray-painted Hell over Lodge. Fair assessment. The door to room 12 was unlocked and the inside was relatively intact. Bed with stained sheets. Chair with one leg shorter than the others. Bathroom with a toilet I didn't dare use and a sink that didn't work anyway. Good enough. I barricaded the door with the dresser, set my backpack down, and collapsed on the bed. The mattress smelled like mildew and disappointment, but I didn't care. My feet were screaming. I pulled off my boots, a mistake because my feet immediately swelled up, and examined the damage. Blisters on both heels. One had popped, leaving raw, weeping skin. The other was heading that way. I dug through my first aid kit for Band-Aids and antibacterial ointment, applied them carefully, wincing at the pain, and this was only day 2. I had weeks of walking ahead of me. I ate a can of soup, chicken noodle, the breakfast of champions, cold because my camping stove was out of fuel and I didn't want to risk a fire anyway. As I ate, I heard scratching at the door. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. The scratching continued. Deliberate, not random. Then a voice, low and wet like someone talking through a mouthful of mud. "Let me in." I didn't move, didn't breathe. "Please, I'm hurt, I need help, I'm not one of them." The voice sounded almost human, almost normal, almost like someone who needed help. But I'd learned my lesson back in Portland. "Go away," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Please, I just need somewhere warm, just for tonight. I won't hurt you." I said, "Go away." The The scratching stopped. Silence. And then after a long pause, "You'll die out here. You know that, right? All alone. No one to help you. No one to watch your back. No one to hear you scream when they come for you." I gripped the revolver in my pocket. "I'll take my chances." "Suit yourself." The voice changed, got colder, less human. "But when you're dying out here, when they're tearing you apart, remember I offered to help." After another minute, I heard footsteps shuffling away through the snow. I sat on the bed, gripping the revolver, listening to my own heartbeat until the sun came up. I didn't sleep at all. Day 3 brought rain. Not the gentle Portland mist I was used to, but a real storm. The kind that soaked through your jacket in seconds and turned the road into a river. I pushed through it anyway, because what else was I going to do? I'd set up camp and wait it out. I'd freeze to death. Better to keep moving. By mid-afternoon, I was shivering so hard I could barely hold my flashlight steady. My fingers were numb, my boots squished with every step, water seeping in through cracks in the leather. And then I saw it. A farm. It was set back from the highway down a long gravel driveway lined with dead trees. The house was dark, windows broken, clearly abandoned. But there was a barn. Big, red, classic Americana. It looked intact. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed bad idea. Barns in horror movies never ended well for the protagonist. But I was wet, cold, and exhausted. My teeth were chattering so hard I bit my tongue. I needed shelter. I headed for the barn. The door was unlocked, hanging slightly crooked on its hinges. I pushed it open carefully, listening for any sound of occupation. Nothing. Inside it was dark and musty but dry. Hay bales stacked in the corner, old farming equipment rusting in the shadows, a plow, a combine harvester missing half its parts, tools I couldn't name. And, jackpot, a wood-burning stove in the back corner. I checked for firewood, found some in a pile near the stove, along with matches in a tin can labeled "Farm Use Only" in faded marker. 10 minutes later, I had a fire going. I stripped off my wet clothes, wringing them out, and hung them on a rusty nail to dry. Sat there in my thermal underwear, basking in the heat like it was a 5-star spa. For the first time in days, I felt almost human. That's when I heard the voice. Not from outside, from the hayloft above me. "You gonna share that fire? It or what?" I grabbed the revolver and pointed it up at the darkness, my heart doing backflips. "Who's there?" A figure dropped from the loft, landing with a soft thump. A kid, couldn't have been older than 16, 17 max, with shaggy dark hair and clothes that looked like they'd been stolen from 3 different Goodwills and then dragged through a swamp. He raised his hands. Whoa, easy, man. I'm not infected or anything, see? No crazy eyes, no trying to eat you." "Prove it." He rolled his eyes. "How am I supposed to prove that? You want me to recite the periodic table, do a backflip? I'm just a kid trying not to freeze to death." "Start with explaining why you're hiding in a barn." "Same reason as you, probably. Trying not to die." He gestured at the fire. "Come on, man, I'm freezing. I won't cause trouble." "I promise." I kept the gun pointed at him. "You alone?" His expression flickered. Something painful crossed his face. "Yeah. Well, I was with my sister, but..." He trailed off, looking away. "She didn't make it. Couple weeks ago." "Ferals?" "Yeah." His voice got quiet. "She got bit trying to get food. Turned about 3 days later. I had to leave her." I lowered the gun slightly. "What's your name?" "Kyle. You?" "Daniel." We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Kyle said, "You heading north?" "Yeah. Seattle. Maybe the San Juan Islands." "Heard about that place. Supposed to be safe, right? Like some kind of community that's still functioning?" "That's the rumor." "You believe it?" "Don't know, but I'm going to find out." He nodded slowly. "Mind if I tag along? At least to Seattle?" I wanted to say no. Solo had kept me alive this long. Another person meant more mouths to feed, more noise, more chance of getting caught. But looking at this kid, alone, scared, probably not going to last another week on his own, I couldn't. Fine, but you pull your weight. Deal. Relief flooded his face. Thank you, seriously, thank you. Don't thank me yet. We might both die. Yeah, but at least I won't die alone. Fair point. We traveled together for the next week, making slow progress up I-5. Kyle was quiet most of the time, which I appreciated. We'd walk for hours without talking, just the sound of our boots crunching through snow and our breath misting in the cold air. But when he did talk, it was usually about his family. His parents were dead, killed during the riots in Tacoma back in July. His dad had gone out to get food and never came back. His mom had died 2 days later from injuries she got trying to protect their house from looters. His older brother Jake had left in September to join some militia group operating out of eastern Washington. Promised he'd come back for Kyle and their sister. Never did. It's just me now, Kyle said one night as we huddled around a small fire in an abandoned gas station. No one else. You're doing better than most, I said. Because what else was there to say? Am I? Because I feel like I'm barely hanging on. Like any second now I'm gonna lose it. That's how everyone feels. The ones who are still alive, anyway. How do you not lose it? Good question. I don't know, I just keep moving, I guess, one foot in front of the other. And that's all anyone can do. He was quiet for a while. Then, you really can hear animals, like talk to them? Sort of. It's not like talking, more like feelings, images. It's hard to explain. That's cool, though, like a superpower. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Not really, mostly it's just depressing. Animals are very honest about how much they think humans suck. Do they? Think we suck? Oh, yeah. They're pretty unanimous on that point. That night the coyotes came. I woke to the sound of them yipping and howling, circling our position. Their voices filled my head, multiple tracks overlapping. Meat, fresh meat. 2 of them, easy prey, young one, old one, both look weak. I sat up fast, grabbing the revolver. Kyle was already awake, his eyes wide in the flickering firelight. What do we do? He whispered. You stay quiet, don't run. Running triggers the chase instinct. Hungry. So hungry. Winter hard. Need food. These humans look sick, but meat is meat. The coyotes moved closer. I could see their eyes reflecting the dying embers of our fire, dozens of them surrounding us in a loose circle. Will they fight? Can they fight? The old one has fire stick. Dangerous. I stood up slowly, making myself as big as possible. Raised the revolver. Go! I shouted. Get out of here! The coyotes hesitated. Loud. Angry. Maybe dangerous, maybe not worth it. I fired a shot into the air. The sound echoed like thunder in the empty gas station, probably audible for miles. The coyotes scattered, yipping in alarm. Fire stick! Loud! Run! Not worth it! Kyle let out a shaky breath. Holy shit. Yeah? Did you just waste a bullet scaring off dogs? Coyotes. And yes, rather waste a bullet than get eaten. Fair. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just sat by the fire, backs against the wall, watching the darkness outside. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound was something coming to kill us. Welcome to the apocalypse. We reached the outskirts of Seattle on March 18th. The city was burning. Not everywhere, just patches of it, columns of black smoke rising into the gray sky like funeral pyres. But it was enough to tell us what we needed to know. Seattle wasn't safe. Seattle was chaos. So what now? Kyle asked, his voice small. I pulled out the map, spreading it on the hood of an abandoned car. We head west, toward the coast. There should be ferries to the islands. Assuming the ferries still work. Assuming that, yeah. And if they don't? Then we find a boat. Do you know how to drive a boat? I'll figure it out. He didn't look convinced. Smart kid. We skirted around the city, staying to the outskirts. It took us 2 days to reach the coast, moving slowly, avoiding the main roads where we could hear gunfire and screaming. On the second day, we ran into survivors. There were 4 of them, holed up in a strip mall that still had most of its windows. They looked rough, hollow-eyed, gaunt, dirty, desperate. The leader was a woman in her 40s with a shotgun and zero patience for bullshit. "What do you want?" she demanded when she saw us. I raised my hands, just passing through, not looking for trouble. "You got food?" "A little." She raised the shotgun. "Give it to us." Kyle stepped forward. "We're not—" "I wasn't asking, kid." I pulled Kyle back. "It's fine. We'll share." I handed over 2 cans of soup, half our remaining supply for the day. The woman took them without thanks and disappeared back into the building. "We should have fought back," Kyle muttered as we walked away. "And gotten shot? No thanks. We're going to starve at this rate. We'll find more." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. The world was picked clean. The only food left was in the hands of people desperate enough to kill for it. We were running out of options. Part 4. The Islands. We found the boat on March 22nd. It was sitting in a marina near Anacortes, in a small fishing boat that looked like it had seen better days but was still miraculously intact. 30 feet long, diesel engine, cabin with a bed and tiny bathroom, chipped paint and rust spots, but the hull seemed solid. Kyle and I spent an hour checking it over. The engine started after some coaxing, sputtered, coughed, nearly died, then roared to life with a sound like industrial thunder. There was even half a tank of diesel left. "This is it," I said. "This is how we get to the islands." Kyle looked at the dark, choppy water. "You sure about this?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." We loaded our gear onto the boat, what little we had left. Our supplies were running dangerously low. Maybe a week of food left if we really stretched it. We cast off just before sunset. The crossing was rough. The water was choppy, in waves slapping against the hull hard enough to make the whole boat shudder. The wind was cold and biting, cutting through our jackets like they were tissue paper. Kyle threw up twice, leaning over the side and groaning. "You okay?" I asked, even though the answer was obvious. "Peachy," he said between heaves. I focused on keeping the boat pointed north, using the GPS that miraculously still worked and the compass I'd found in the cabin. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of freezing wind, choppy waves, and the very real possibility that we'd sink and die in the cold Pacific water. But we made it. San Juan Island appeared out of the darkness, a black mass against the blacker sky. Mountains rising up like the spine of some great beast. We docked at a small pier near Friday Harbor, tying off the boat with shaking hands. "So," Kyle said, looking around at the empty docks. "Where is everyone?" I didn't know, but we were about to find out. Friday Harbor was a ghost town. We walked through the streets slowly, our footsteps echoing off the empty buildings. Every shop had shattered windows. Every house looked abandoned. Shops with signs that used to say cheerful tourist things like "Welcome" and "Island Fresh Seafood" were now just hollow shells. Cars were abandoned mid-street, doors open, belongings scattered. "This place is dead," Kyle whispered. "Maybe they moved inland. Or maybe they're all dead." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. We found a hotel near the water, the Island Inn according to the weather-beaten sign, and broke into one of the rooms on the first floor. The door was already unlocked, which should have been a warning, but we were too tired to care. Inside was surprisingly clean, suspiciously clean, like someone had been living here recently. 2 beds, a bathroom, even some furniture that wasn't completely trashed. Kyle collapsed on one of the beds. "I'm sleeping for 12 hours. Wake me when the apocalypse is over. I sat by the window looking out at the dark street. That's when I heard it. Not a voice from outside, not an animal, but something else. A pull. A sensation I couldn't quite describe, like someone was calling my name from far away. I stood up and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" Kyle asked, propping himself up on one elbow. "I'll be back." "Dude, it's dark out. You're going to get eaten by something." "I'll be fine." That's what everyone says before they die in horror movies. This isn't a movie. Feels like one. I stepped outside and followed the pull. It led me down the main street past the empty shops toward the edge of town. And that's where I found them. The bees. Thousands of them, maybe millions. Covering the entire side of a building like a living carpet, their bodies moving in slow, synchronized waves. I stopped dead. Their voices hit me all at once, a chorus so loud it nearly knocked me over. "You came, you listened, you heard. Good, good." What is this? The last, the survivors, the final colony. We've been waiting. Waiting for what? For someone who could hear, who could understand. Most humans can't hear us, but you can. I stepped closer. Even the bees didn't move, didn't swarm, just waited. "We need to show you something. We need to tell you the truth." "What truth?" "The one your kind refuses to see. The one that killed us, the one that's killing you." And then they showed me, not with words, with images, memories. A lifetime, millions of lifetimes compressed into seconds. I saw the labs. Scientists in white coats working late nights, running tests on chemicals with names I couldn't pronounce. I saw the corporate boardrooms. Men in suits, always men, always suits, discussing profit margins and acceptable losses. I saw the emails. Subject lines like Re-Pollinator Impact Study and Q3 Agricultural Projections and Risk Assessment Neonicotinoid Rollout. I saw the pesticides, designed to kill aphids, beetles, anything that damaged crops. But also killing bees. Slowly, yet quietly, year after year. I saw Agricorp, the name blazing in my mind like a brand, the largest agricultural corporation in the world. I saw their executives dismiss study after study showing the dangers. Acceptable losses, one executive said in a board meeting I was somehow witnessing. Farmers need these products, the market demands them. We can't halt progress because some bees might be affected. The studies show catastrophic colony collapse if we continue. The studies are inconclusive, and besides, we're developing robotic pollinators, problem solved. I saw the robotic pollinators, tiny drones buzzing through orchards, expensive, patented, controlled entirely by Agricorp. The plan had been to let the bees die, force farmers to buy the drones, create a monopoly on pollination itself, but the bees died faster than expected, all at once, in April 2027. A cascade failure nobody predicted. The drones couldn't keep up. They broke down. They were too slow. They needed infrastructure that no longer existed when society collapsed. The plan had failed spectacularly. And now humanity was paying the price. Your kind did this, but there is still a chance. A chance for what? For rebirth, for balance, for your kind to learn. They showed me where she was, a queen, the last queen, alive in a climate-controlled case underground on the other side of the island. We saved one queen, the last. She carries the genetic memory of millions of years. If you can protect her, breed her, spread her offspring, there is still a chance. A chance to fix this, a chance to begin again, to rebuild, but only if you choose, only if you act. The bees lifted off all at once, rising into the air like a cloud of living smoke, and flew away into the night. I stood there alone, processing what I'd just seen. The truth, the terrible, awful truth. I told Kyle everything when I got back. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "So you're saying we need to save a bee?" A queen bee. Yes. And this is going to... What? Fix the apocalypse? It's a start. Kyle ran a hand through his hair. This is insane. I know. But you're going to do it anyway. Yeah, he sighed. Fine, I'll help. But if we die doing this, I'm haunting you. Deal. We found the bunker the next morning, hidden in the woods on the northern part of the island. It was small, just a concrete room underground, accessed by a rusted ladder that looked like it might collapse if you breathed on it wrong. Inside, in a climate-controlled case, was the queen. She was beautiful, larger than the worker bees, her wings shimmering even in the dim light of my flashlight. Moving slowly, deliberately. You came. Yeah, I said, I came. Will you protect me? I'll try. That is all we can ask. I carefully lifted the case. It was heavy, maybe 30 pounds, but manageable. Kyle and I climbed out of the bunker and started the long walk back to the boat. We made it halfway before we ran into them, the ferals. There were maybe a dozen of them moving through the trees like shadows. They didn't charge immediately, didn't scream, they just watched, circling us like wolves deciding if the prey was worth the effort. Daniel, Kyle whispered, what do we do? I set the case down carefully and pulled out the revolver. We run. But the queen, I'll carry her, you just run. One of the ferals, a man in a tattered business suit, his face covered in dried blood, took a step forward, then another. Then they all charged. We ran. I grabbed the case with one hand, the revolver with the other, and ran like hell. The ferals gave chase, their footsteps pounding behind us, their screams echoing through the trees. I fired twice over my shoulder. Didn't hit anything, but it slowed them down. Kyle was faster than me, pulling ahead. Don't stop, I yelled. We burst out of the trees and onto the beach. The boat was 50 yards away. The ferals were closer. I fired again. This time, one of them dropped, clutching their leg. Go, go! I screamed at Kyle. We reached the boat and threw the case in. I turned to fire again, but the gun clicked. Empty. Shit. The ferals were 20 feet away now. 10 feet. Kyle had the engine started, the boat pulling away from the dock. I jumped, landing hard in the boat, my shoulder hitting the deck with a crack that might have been pain or might have been bone. Kyle gunned the engine. We pulled away from the dock just as the first feral dove into the water after us. It didn't make it. The water was too cold, the current too strong. We watched from the boat as they stood on the dock, screaming at us, their voices raw and inhuman. And then we were gone, cutting through the water toward the mainland. Part 5. The New World. We didn't go back to Seattle. Instead, we headed south down the coast, stopping at small towns and abandoned farms, spreading the word, we have a queen. We can rebuild. Some people believed us. Most didn't. Yo, you expect me to believe that one bee is gonna save the world? A man in Port Angeles said, laughing in our faces. Kid, the world's over, accept it. But some people listened. A farmer in eastern Washington, a woman named Margaret who'd somehow kept her land protected from raiders, gave us supplies in exchange for a promise. If we succeeded, if we brought the bees back, she'd help spread them. I've been keeping hives my whole life, she said, tears in her eyes as she looked at the queen. This is a miracle. Do you understand? This is a second chance. I know, I said. Don't waste it. I won't. A scientist in Idaho, a Dr. Chen who'd worked for the USDA before everything collapsed, examined the queen and wept. The genetic diversity, she whispered. If we can breed her, if we can create new colonies, and there's hope. How long will it take? Years, maybe decades to get back to pre-collapse levels, but it's possible. We left the queen with Dr. Chen. She had a secure facility, climate-controlled greenhouses, knowledge I didn't have. Take care of her, I said, with my life. Kyle and I kept traveling, looking for more survivors, more people who wanted to rebuild. We found them, slowly, one by one. A community in Montana, another in Wyoming. People who hadn't given up, who were still trying. 3 months later, I got a message over the ham radio. Dr. Chen's voice, crackly but unmistakable. "Daniel, the queen laid eggs. We have larvae, we have new bees." I sat there, radio in hand, and cried. Kyle put a hand on my shoulder. "We did it." "No, we started it. And the real work is still ahead." But for the first time in almost a year, I allowed myself to hope. Just a little. Kyle left me in November. We'd been traveling together for 8 months. 8 months of walking through hell, of near-death experiences, of learning to trust someone again. He'd become, not quite a friend, but something close. A brother, maybe. The kind you choose rather than the kind you're born with. But he wanted to go back to Washington, to Tacoma, to see if any of his family had survived. His brother Jake had said he'd come back for them. Kyle wanted to believe he had. I didn't try to stop him. What right did I have? We were standing outside Dr. Chen's compound in Idaho. November snow falling soft and thick, the kind that makes everything quiet. "You going to be okay?" he asked. I almost laughed. And was anyone okay anymore? "I've been alone before, I'll manage." "Yeah, but now you've got responsibility, the bees, Dr. Chen, all these people depending on you, that's a lot." "I'll handle it." He studied me for a long moment, then reached into his backpack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. "Here." I unwrapped it. A book. The SAS Survival Handbook. Dog-eared, water-stained, half the pages falling out. "It was my dad's," Kyle said. "He was a Marine, always prepared for the worst. Guess he was right to be." "I can't take this." "Yeah, you can. You need it more than me. Besides," his voice cracked, "I want you to have it, so you remember." "Remember what?" "That we made it this far, that we did something that mattered." I pulled him into a hug, and he was stiff at first. Teenage boys and emotions don't mix well. But then he hugged back. "Thank you," I said, "for everything. Thank you for not leaving me in that barn." We pulled apart. He wiped his eyes quickly, pretending it was snow. "You really think this is going to work?" he asked. "That we can fix things? That the world can come back?" I looked at the greenhouses behind us, at the bees inside, buzzing with life and purpose. "I think we have to try. I think if we give up, then everyone who died, your sister, everyone, they died for nothing. And if trying isn't enough, then at least we tried." He nodded slowly. "All right. Good luck, Daniel." "You too, kid." "Hey, I'm only like 5 years younger than you." "Yeah, but you'll always be kid to me." He smiled. A real smile. First one I'd seen from him in months. "And if you find Jake," I said, "tell him I said he's an asshole for abandoning you." "Will do." I watched him walk away down the snow-covered road. He turned once, waved, then kept going. Kept going until he disappeared around a bend and was swallowed by the white landscape. I stood there for a long time after he was gone. Then I turned back to the work. The work consumed me. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. Dr. Chen taught me everything she knew about beekeeping, the life cycle of bees, how to identify a healthy hive versus a sick one, how to harvest honey without destroying the colony. "Think of it as farming," she said one day. "But instead of plants, you're farming pollinators. You take care of them, they take care of the ecosystem." We had 50 hives now, then 70, then 100, each one a small miracle. Other people started showing up. Word had spread about what we were doing, the crazy people trying to bring back the bees. Some came to help, a former beekeeper from Montana, a botanist from Colorado, a high school biology teacher who'd been living in her basement for a year. Some came to scoff. "You really think a few bees are gonna fix this?" I didn't argue with them. Just showed them the hives, the flowers starting to bloom in the greenhouses, the fruits starting to grow. Some left, some stayed. We were building something, slowly, painfully, but we were building. In January, almost a full year after the bees died, we had our first harvest. Apples, not many, maybe 20. Grown in the greenhouse, pollinated by our bees. Dr. Chen cried when she bit into one. I forgot what real food tastes like. I took a bite. It was tart and sweet and perfect. It tasted like hope. We split the apples among everyone in the compound. 15 people by then. Each person got one slice. Margaret, the farmer from Washington who'd helped us early on, held her slice up to the light. My grandfather used to have an orchard, she said. Thousands of apple trees. I'd spend summers picking fruit with my cousins. We'd eat so many apples we'd get sick. She took a bite, closed her eyes. I never thought I'd taste one again. We sat in silence eating our apple slices, and for a moment everything was okay. Not perfect, not fixed, but okay. Spring came. The world started to thaw, and with the thaw came problems. Raiders found us in March, 6 of them, armed with rifles and bad intentions. They wanted our food, our supplies, our greenhouses. We said no. They said they'd take it anyway. That's when the bees attacked. I didn't command them, didn't ask them to, they just did. Thousands of bees swarming out of the hives, descending on the raiders in a cloud of fury. The raiders ran, screaming, firing wildly, but you can't shoot bees. They were gone within minutes. Dr. Chen looked at me. Did you tell them to do that? No, they just protected their home. She laughed, a little scared, a little amazed. We've created something incredible here, and something terrifying. Yeah. What if they turn on us? They won't. We're not a threat to them. How do you know? I didn't, but I believed it anyway. Summer brought the swarm. 6 months after Kyle left, the bees decided they were ready. I'm the queen. We'd named her Eve because apparently even scientists have a sense of irony. Had produced enough offspring that the hive needed to split. Half the bees left, swarming into the sky in a massive cloud. We watched them go. Thank you, I heard. Faint, but clear. We are free now. We will spread. We will rebuild. We will remember. Remember what? I called after them. Everything. The before, the after. The humans who killed us. The humans who saved us. The swarm disappeared over the mountains. Dr. Chen laughed and cried at the same time. They're going to pollinate. They're going to spread. My God, it's really happening. I smiled. Yeah, it is. We had done it. Against all odds, against all logic, we had brought the bees back. It was a small victory in a broken world. But it was a victory nonetheless. A fall brought news. A trader came through in September. Old guy with a donkey and a cart full of goods to barter. Heard about you people, he said. The bee whisperers. Is that what they're calling us? Among other things. Most people think you're crazy, but I've seen flowers blooming places they shouldn't be. Seen fruit on trees that have been dead for years. So either you're doing something right or I'm hallucinating. We're doing something right, he nodded. Got some news you might want to hear. About a kid, traveling with an older guy. They were asking about this place. My heart skipped. What did the kid look like? 17, 18 maybe. Shaggy dark hair, skinny as hell. Said his name was Kyle. He's alive? Was 2 weeks ago. Him and this other guy, his brother maybe. And they were headed this way. I could have hugged the old trader. Kyle had found Jake. They were both alive, and they were coming here. They arrived in October just as the first snow was falling. I saw them from the greenhouse, 2 figures trudging through the snow. One tall and broad-shouldered, one smaller, familiar. I ran outside. Kyle! He looked up, grinned. Miss me? I grabbed him in a hug so tight he wheezed. Can't breathe, man. Don't care. Jake, the older brother, stood back watching with an expression I couldn't read. He looked like Kyle but harder, more worn down. You Daniel? He asked. Yeah. Kyle told me what you did, taking him in, helping him survive. He helped me too. Jake nodded. Still, thank you. You find what you were looking for? In Tacoma? His expression darkened. You found my parents' graves, found our house burned down, found enough. I'm sorry. It is what it is. He looked at the greenhouses. This the place with the bees? Yeah. Can I see? I showed them around, the hives, the flowers, the fruit trees starting to bear. Jake was quiet the whole time, just taking it in. Finally he said, You really think you can fix the world with bees? Not fix, just make it a little less broken. He smiled. It didn't quite reach his eyes. That's something, I guess. It's enough. They stayed, both of them. Jake knew how to build things, how to defend things. Kyle knew how to hope. We needed both. Winter came again, my second winter in this new world. We had more people now, 23 in total, and a small community held together by shared purpose and the fragile hope that we could build something better. We celebrated Christmas, not with presents or trees or any of the old traditions, but with food, real food, apples and tomatoes and squash grown in our greenhouses, pollinated by our bees. It wasn't much, but it was more than we'd had the year before. Margaret stood up to say grace. We weren't a religious group. Most of us had stopped believing in God when the world ended, but the gesture felt right. Thank you for this food, she said. Thank you for these people. Thank you for giving us a reason to keep going. We ate, and for a few hours everything was normal, or as normal as anything could be in the apocalypse. The world was still broken. It would be broken for a long time, maybe forever in some ways. Even the ferals still roamed the cities. Food was still scarce. Most of humanity was dead. Civilization as we knew it was gone. But somewhere out there, bees were pollinating flowers. Somewhere out there, trees were bearing fruit. Somewhere out there, people were rebuilding. And that was enough. That was more than enough. It was hope, and hope, I'd learned, was the most powerful thing in the world, even in the apocalypse, especially in the apocalypse. 6 months after that, the bees swarmed for the first time. I was helping Dr. Chen with the hives. We had 50 now spread across 3 greenhouses when it happened. The bees poured out in a massive cloud, darkening the sky. Thank you, I heard, faint but clear. We are free now. We will spread. We will rebuild. You're welcome, I said. The swarm flew off into the distance, disappearing over the mountains. Dr. Chen laughed and cried at the same time. They're going to pollinate, they're going to spread, it's really happening. I smiled. Yeah, it is. The world was still broken. It would be broken for a long time, maybe forever in some ways. The ferals still roamed the cities, food was still scarce. Most of humanity was dead. But somewhere out there, bees were pollinating flowers, and that was enough. That was more than enough. It was hope. The end. Author's note. I've been thinking about this story for 3 years, not writing it, thinking about it, letting it percolate in the back of my mind while I went about my normal life, going to the grocery store, complaining about traffic, scrolling through my phone instead of doing literally anything productive. And the whole time, in the back of my head there was this question: what if the bees died? Not hypothetically, not what if in some distant future, but what if they died tomorrow? What if we woke up and they were just gone? We don't think about bees much. They're background noise. They're the thing you swat at during a picnic. They're an emoji you use when you text someone busy as a bee and immediately feel stupid for using such a cliché metaphor. But they're also the reason we have food. About 1/3 of the food we eat depends on pollinators, and bees do most of that work. Almonds, apples, cherries, blueberries, avocados. Yeah, your toast is bee-dependent. Coffee, chocolate. The list goes on. And bee populations have been declining for decades. Colony collapse disorder, pesticides, habitat loss, climate change, the works. And scientists have been warning us, we've been ignoring them. Because it's easier to ignore warnings than to change. So I wrote this story. Not because I think the apocalypse is coming tomorrow. Not because I think one person and one queen bee can save the world. Though wouldn't that be nice? I wrote it because I wanted to explore what happens when we ignore warnings until it's too late. When convenience becomes catastrophe. When the systems we depend on collapse and we're left scrambling to survive. And I wanted to write about someone who's different. Someone who doesn't fit in. Who struggles with social connections. Who feels like an outsider. And show that those differences can become strengths when the world changes. Daniel isn't a hero. He's just a guy trying not to die. He makes mistakes, he gets scared, and he runs when he should fight and fights when he should run. But he listens, he pays attention, he adapts. And in the end, maybe that's enough. I don't know if this story will change anyone's mind about bees or climate change or pesticides or any of the big issues it touches on. But if it makes you think, even for a second, about the systems we depend on and how fragile they are, then I'll call that a win. Also, if you have a yard, plant some flowers. Native wildflowers if you can. The bees will thank you. Stay weird, stay alive, and for God's sake, don't eat anyone. DM March 2027 in the story's timeline. Actually written. February 2026 in our timeline.